Today I'm going to give a lesson on how I'm going to show you how I iron our business. Always do them the same way. I do the collar first, I do the yoke, which is this part at the back. I call it the yoke. It's just this piece of double material there. Then I do the sleeves, I do the back, then I do the left front, finish with the right front, but finally do the collar again with a small amount of starch. So I'll start today, and I'm using a steam iron with a reservoir. Because I do a lot of ironing, I like a steam iron with a reservoir because I'm not having to constantly change the water, but any good steam iron will do just as good. Righto, so we'll start with the collar. Flatten it out. You can stretch and pull the material a little bit to try and get a nice even flat finish. Then I go to the yoke. I fold it where the seam is at the back, lie it on the board, have the collar upright so you can get right into there, and iron it flat. As you can see, it's a really high power steam, so I'll try not to speak over the top of it. The sleeves are next. On the sleeve you'll always find there's a seam. It's double stitching, really hard to show you here on camera, but there's always two lines of stitching, but only one place where the actual material meets. Now I'm not sure that you can see it here, but there is a seam. Always make sure that you are ironing with that seam at the edge. So I first find the seam, I make sure it's nice and flat, then I iron the seam. So that means that when you actually iron out, you'll always, every week, every time you iron this same shirt, you'll get your crease line at the same place on the sleeve. So go back, have it the seam, and then iron out. Push away. Gently into the corner. And turn your sleeve over. You'll notice you've almost got it flat anyway. So again, start at the seam, push away from the seam. I don't usually bother opening the cuffs up. I find most men just, here's one who does it on one sleeve and not on the other. So again, you're finding the edge where the seam meets, not where the double stitching is, where the seam meets the material. Not always easy to find, like on this case. And if you've ironed them previously at different parts, it may take a while to get to having the seam at the right place, but again, if you do it this way, you're always going to have your sleeve crease at the same place every time, and not going to finish up with multiple crease lines down the edge of your shirt. You'll always have the crease in the same spot. Always push away from the seam down here. Okay, next is the back, surprisingly. Lay the shirt on the ironing board and you're going to iron the back from the inside. So the first thing is to flatten out the hem at the bottom, which in most cases, if you've used a dryer, it will have curled up. Going to keep pushing out, always pushing your iron away and then into the sleeve hole itself. Move it across the board. Going to do the same on the other side. So make sure your hem is nice and flat at the bottom. I very rarely use water. Sometimes though I'll get a customer who brings in shirts that have been dried to within an inch of their life, and I'll either damp them a little and give them a quick tumble dry to sort of bring them back to a reasonable standard, or I will use a spray bottle if I feel I have to. Some of the more expensive shirts I do have to spray bottle because I cannot get some of the materials up to a standard that's acceptable to me. So from there we lift the shirt up. We're going to iron the side with the buttons. So you're just lifting it up off the board and then back on the board. And you pull it over, and I'll just move the ironing board down a bit so you can see. Pull it over so that the nose of the ironing board has gone into the top of the sleeve. And we're going to iron that piece first. And just up round that area. And then we're going to take it off the nose and put it on the board like that. So you've got your seam here, the front seam there. We're going to iron the labels back in. And I'm either always just pulling a little at the material or just moving it so that you're always pulling it out as far as it can go, not stretching it, but being a little bit firm with it. Take that off there. Move over, take the other. You're now going to bring around the left front side. Again, I'm putting it over the edge of the nose here. I can even put it further if I want. But I tend not to go to that extreme. I like to just get it so that I'm actually flattening out this yoke piece and the seam around the sleeve. Once I'm happy with that, lift it off the nose, bring it back onto the table, the board, and again pushing and making sure that bottom seam's nice and flat. Straight up the front. Take it off and hold it up by the collar. I'm going to put the collar back on the ironing board. Always use just a spray of starch. I don't use much at all. And I actually always iron the collar as it lays. If there's buttons, I'll do them up. Otherwise, I'll take a coat hanger . I usually hang it up to do this, but seeing as I've got this on the board, I always do up the second button from the top. I shake it so that it sits nicely on the hanger, and I always fold my sleeves inwards. But you can see how you've got a really nice crisp edge. And if you do that to the sleeves every time, from the seam out, you'll get that line every time at that place.